What is the scariest thing you've ever seen while driving at night? A lonely abandoned shack with a bunch of arrows pointing to it, saying come in. Bruh, either these types of traps only exist in cartoons. A butthole overtaking a petrol tanker around a blind corner, coming my way, scared the crap out of me. I was following a grey Toyota Tundra in a massive blizzard through Montana on McDonald Pass. He was going pretty quick most of the way but must have been unfamiliar with how steep the final few miles are. He got away from me as I slowed down to about 35. Not 5 minutes later I passed his tire marks in the fresh snow that went off the side of the mountain. Pulled over and looked down to see his truck upside down and on fire about 300 yards down. Called 911. He didn't die but was burnt up pretty bad. Sad and scary, and don't go 50 in the snow just because you have a truck or 4WD. I've heard it said before, but I'll say it again. 4-wheel drive isn't 4-wheel stop. 3 AM on a lonely road and I was the passenger. An old man only wearing a bra, panties and high heels was casually walking down the road. My friend who was driving didn't believe me and went back around. Sure enough, he saw him and we were like WTF. Go to pay the bills somehow. Someone I knew locally came across a Jeep that had just crashed into the ditch on a highway at night. Flipped on its top, wheels still turning kind of thing. He was the first on scene so called 911 and ran down into the ditch. The driver, who was badly mangled, had been tossed from the car and was dying. This guy held him and the driver died in his arms. The weirdest part of it all was that he found out the next day that it was his cousin, but he hadn't been able to recognize him. I hope the guy who died was comforted by knowing a family member was with him. Driving down a 2-lane divided highway, I came up to a couple semis and went into the left lane to pass. I did a shoulder check to get back into the right lane when I saw headlights in front of me. In my lane, the car was going the wrong way. I managed to swerve into the ditch. Felt like I was mere centimeters from death. Thought my wife's scream would be the last thing I ever hear, and I never want to hear it again. The semis I passed all pulled to the shoulder to come check on us. Didn't see the car anywhere. I think they just kept going. Had to pull into a gas station after and collect myself. Actually very nice of those semis to check on you guys. A freaking owl standing on the corpse of a large buck in the mountains at 3:05 AM. All you see as you approach are 2 glowing red orbs. Then slowly becomes huge dark form standing on the edge of the road with eyes of fire. Then you get close enough and this massive freaking owl just gives you the death stare as you go past. You realize it was just a large ass owl standing on the remains of fresh roadkill. Freaked me out for the rest of the dark part of the drive. I slammed the brakes once because I saw deer in my peripheral vision. Upon closer inspection, it was a mounted deer head on a stick in the middle of the woods. Slammed the gas after I realized that might have been a setup by game wardens to catch illegal poachers at night. Frogs. Freaking everywhere. Like hundreds of frogs all over the road. Damn it, Moses. I was fetching someone from his workplace. Had to go through some fields, and some parts of the road were dark. I saw a thin, long object wiggling at an upright position at the side of the road in front of me. Totally freaked me out. I thought I was finally experiencing something extraordinary. As I got closer I realized it was a tail of a cow. It must have escaped from some field and was hanging around at the side of the road. The cow itself was black, the tail slightly lighter in color. That's why I only saw the tail moving first without seeing the whole cow first. Oh my, yes dear, that's just old Betty's bottom, not a ghost worm. I woke up in the driver's seat to the sound of rumble strips and the guardrail coming right at me. Well, that's why the rumble strips are there. I had just finished driving for Uber and was driving down the access road to my home around 3 AM when I saw a body lying completely lifeless next to one of those motorized scooters. I pulled over and flagged down his buddies who were drunk and kept going without realizing their friend was lying on the ground. Ambulance arrived and took the kid away, but I never came to find out if he made it. FCK those scooters, man. I got off on my exit, and the whole road was covered in blood. I put on my brights and saw a bisected body of a large animal. It just made me so sad. This is like a weekly occurrence on MI highways. A dead, butchered horse laying in the road. Someone had completely skinned and butchered a horse. took the choice pieces of meat, and just dumped it on the highway. I almost crashed into it. WTH. A hitchhiker almost leaping out in front of my car on a dark forest road late at night. The woman literally popped out of nowhere. Had to drift into the oncoming lane. Luckily there was no one else and painted median there. Read a police report that she ended up getting hit minutes after I drove by. She was intoxicated and running from the police. Pretty freaking creepy. I hope she's alright. I can't imagine what the driver that hit her was thinking. I dropped my GF off the night we saw the Mothman Prophecies. It wasn't a super scary movie, but it had some scares. I take the interstate home. On the way, there is a curve where there aren't any lights, just a dark stretch of interstate. As I came around the bend, there was a guy in a black trench coat walking along the side of the road. As it was about 3 AM, I guess I started him. So, when my headlights hit him, he whipped around and I swear he stared me right in the eyes. My heart jumped into my throat. The whole event lasted maybe 2 seconds tops, but it had my heart racing. Not paranormal, but definitely scary for me. I picture him whipping around like that old dramatic chipmunk meme. Not me but a friend. After dropping me off at my house around 2 AM, my friend calls me and tells me to pick my doors. He said he saw a man standing in the middle of the road and that as he passed him the man kept staring through him. Not at him really, but like there was something behind him in his back seat. He also said he could barely make out anything about the man other than his large eyes and trench coat. What really terrified me is that this happened on a street that only my family lives on and no one would have been out that night. Also we're a solid 1.5 miles from the nearest neighbor. Freaked me the heck out. I was on I-70 in Colorado going towards Utah. Pulled over at a gas station at 8 PM. Fueling up I notice a couple of attractive women pumping gas. On the other side of the pump was the man in his late 40s, just staring at these young women without notice of anything else going on around him. I walk inside to go grab some food for the next few hours of driving. When I come out I see both the younger women's car and the older man's truck are gone. I decided to hang out at the gas station for the next hour to catch a little sleep before hitting the road again. After driving for a few hours, I was speeding heavy. I pull over at yet another gas station. The young women are there getting gas and eating some food on a picnic table. Looked like they had been there for a while. I didn't see any sign of the man in the truck but can't say I was looking very hard for it. Well, here is where it got creepy as heck. Can't say I didn't stare at them a bit. I mean they were good looking women. As I am watching them leave I see in the next parking lot over some headlights turn on and it's the same man as before. He leaves when the women leave once again. Okay, that's a bit weird but could just be a coincidence as there weren't many places to pull over. I leave a few minutes later and catch up to them. Now this guy is riding their ass with his high beams on. I decided to slow down and stay a distance behind the truck. 10 minutes or so later the women pull over once again to most likely get this guy off their ass. With a sign of relief the truck keeps going and I continue on my way. About 1 mile down the road the guy just pulls off to the side of the highway. So I pull off a mile or so down the road again. Sure enough the women drive by and the guy is still following them. At this point we are out in the middle of nowhere and too many coincidences have happened. I called the cops to alert them and about 15 minutes the cops pulled the guy over. I could have just seen too many horror movies that started like this and overreacted but you never know. Better safe than sorry. It was a good call to alert the police. Even if it was a coincidence, no harm would have been done to the guy, and if it wasn't, you might have just saved those 2 girls' lives. A lot of people that drive for a living or have done balls to the wall cross-country drives can tell you about the running shadows. First time I saw them I was on the tail end of 12 straight hours of driving. I was driving through the middle of nowhere, in the desert, at night. Very little light from the sky, no man-made lights even on the horizon. Just a pitiful cone from my truck's headlamp, and being in the middle of the desert it pretty much only lights up the road ahead. Nothing above ground level to catch the light. As I'm barreling along I start to see shadowy figures running alongside my truck out of the corners of my eyes, on 2 legs and 4. All I can think about is the creepy stories you read online about crap that lives out in the desert, or the Asian ghost stories where if you don't acknowledge the spirit it can't harm you. So I've got my eyes glued to the road, refusing to let them flicker off to the side. I rolled my windows up and cranked up the volume on my radio. Drove like that for probably an hour and a half until they slowly petered out roughly 15 minutes outside of a little one-light town. I've had people try to carjack me, people try to rob me after I pull over to render aid, people jump out at me on twisty mountain road, you name it, but nothing matching that level of fear the first time I saw them. Felt like my spine was rippling like a ribbon in a wind trying to jump clear out of my back and hide under the seat. Sleep deprivation mixed with sensory deprivation does some strange things. I used to deliver pizza, and often had deliveries right at midnight when we closed. One time, late at night, I'm driving back to the store through a small neighborhood. Up ahead I see something. It's perfectly spherical, bright shiny thing, just hovering about 6 feet off the ground. Not moving at all. I pull up very slowly. Still doesn't move. Still can't comprehend what I'm looking at. Just this shiny hovering orb in the road at midnight. At this point my curiosity has overridden my fear. I'm the guy in the horror movie who dies first because I just gotta know. Either I die or I get a cool story, right? So I hop out of the car and slowly walk up to it. I'm right in front of it and still can't understand what I'm seeing. So I reach out and touch it. It's a balloon. One of those foil birthday balloons with the streetlights shining on it, making it look weird out of context in the middle of the night on an empty road. This is my favorite response because it feels like exactly how I would react. I was driving on a near empty freeway at midnight when I saw a weird flickering light on the freeway. It was super dark and barely any lights besides headlights, so I slowed down a bit and merged a lane over. As I passed I got a good look and it was a car absolutely destroyed and on fire. I was a little shocked and ended up driving a bit past it before I really saw what it was, and by the time I thought about pulling over it was already far behind me and a cop sped past me on the other side, so I knew they were aware of what happened. A closed Waffle House. This is by far the scariest reply on this thread. A closed Waffle House signifies the end of times. I was driving on the expressway around 2 AM and a semi hit a car and it went into the median. The car basically folded into itself and was beyond smashed. I can't imagine that person survived. It was incredibly sad and terrifying to see. I was driving down the highway during the middle of the afternoon and watched a guy get out of a minivan parked on the side of the road and run out in front of an 18-wheeler. He got hit and died, I assume on impact. Crap freaking sucked. I went back to the office and asked if I could go home early. This is a story about something that was really scary at the time, but kind of funny in retrospect. Once I was driving through an unfamiliar stretch of desert and mountains on my way to a campground in Utah. The sun had set and it was pitch black outside. We hadn't seen a town for a long time, which was fine because we didn't need fuel, but it's worth noting here that before it had gotten dark, the last several exits that had been marked on the map didn't appear to have any people at them. There weren't many other cars on the road that we could see, but eventually this vehicle came up behind me, clearly going much faster than I was. He passed me on the left and as he went around me I could see that it was a pickup truck with a lift kit. The pickup got back into my lane in front of me. He stayed there for a few seconds, then suddenly swerved to the left and slammed on his brakes. He then cut back over into my lane so he was behind me and switched on his brights. He followed me like this for some time, getting right on my rear and flashing his brights repeatedly. I started getting nervous at this bizarre and aggressive behavior. I told my wife to help me find a populated exit. The road began to spiral down a steep mountainous slope. What followed next was a progression of increasingly alarming road signs that seemed like they belonged in a Looney Tunes cartoon where a character is about to careen off a cliff. These signs said things like, "Watch for wildlife, frequent wildlife crossing next 20 miles, watch for ice, watch for falling rock," etc. None of them would have been scary on their own, or maybe in the daylight, but at night, in a situation where I was starting to panic, they seemed alarming and it seemed like they were ridiculously increasing in severity. At one point, a sign popped up that said road damage. Since I was in panic mode, I remember exclaiming, "Why don't they just fix the damage instead of putting up a sign?" Eventually, we found a town with lots of lights and I promptly exited. I was terrified the guy would follow us, but he went on past me. I pulled into a gas station and that's when I figured what I probably should have realized a long time before. I had my brights on. killer clown on the side of a deserted country road during the 2016 clonepocalypse. I think I cried. You've been visited by the swinging thick boy. Like and comment swing well thick boy and you'll be blessed with many thick woofers in your life. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.